Welcome to my Wrenching Diaries. This is my 2008 Lexus IS250. This baby has a 2.5 liter naturally aspirated V6, pushing out 204 Japanese points. And paired with that, a 6-speed automatic transmission with paddle shifters. I bought this car a couple of years back, bone stock. The main thing on this channel, do some modifications, aesthetics, performance. So before that, I had to get the car in perfect condition. So it has some problems. One of the major ones I'm gonna try to address in this video, failing water pump. I found out it's failing because the grinding noise comes from the engine. Let me show you how it sounds like. This grinding noise that you hear, it's directly coming from the water pump. You can diagnose this simply taking out the drawer belt and starting the engine. And if it goes away, it's a water pump. Otherwise, you have bigger fish to fry. So I went and grabbed everything we need to complete this shop, the tools and the parts. Let's get started. So I got 10 liters of premixed coolant from Lexus, brand new thermostat, all the O-rings that are required for this job, and the water pump itself. This is an OEM equivalent high quality water pump by NPW.
If you want to go with the OEM, it's made by ASIN.
So let's check the car up and prep the car for draining the coolant. And a huge shout out to my mate Charvey for tagging along. Then all the beauty covers comes off. So next up we had to get the factory cold air intake out and the coolant reservoir to gain more access to the front of the engine. And those components mostly held by 10mm bolts. I also have an oil leak coming from right side VVTi oil supply where the banjo bolt is. And I already got all the crush washers to fix that issue as well. And next up, the coolant reservoir comes off, held by 2 bolts and a clip to the wiring loom. And next, let's remove all the 2 million bolts holding the under tray to get access to the radiator drain plug. And don't forget to get a drip tray or something to catch all the coolant and open the radiator cap on top. Then I grabbed a bottle of degreaser and went to town with it underneath the engine to clean up all the gunk that built up over time because of an oil leak or something. So next up is taking off the water bypass assembly that holds the thermostat. Also this thing sends coolant to the throttle body warmer and the heater core inside the car. Next, taking all the clamps off, holding the hoses. And if the hoses are too hard to take off, simply grab a plier and rock it back and forth to break the seal. Then you can take it off with these. Not this one though, this one gave me a fright. These two goes to the throttle body warmer. And these two are a bit of pain to take off. And this one goes to the overflow. And this is the lower radiator hose. And I took the battery terminals off. It's really important when you're removing electrical components like this injector driver I'm taking off next. And spoiler alert, you will see in the future when you need to take off the battery when you're removing any electrical components. Here I'm taking off the bolts that hold the wiring loom to the engine. this step is not necessary for this job. I'm just simply doing this to get more space for removing stuff. And these heat shields and covers are all gunked up because I think the previous guy who did the oil change had steady hands. Next, grab a 40mm socket with a breaker bar and rotate the driver tensioner counterclockwise and insert a pin to hold it in place. I highly recommend loosening these bolts before you take off the drive belt, because it will be a pain to loosen this layer if you don't have a pulley holder tool. Check your belt for cracks or excessive wear. If it's so, just replace it. And this cover held by a couple of plastic screws and bolts. Simply comes off like that. The injector driver is held by one bolt and two nuts, and remove that, you can simply get it out of the way. Boy, it needs some good cleaning. There you go, getting close with the water pump. Next up, the water inlet assembly or the water bypass, held by 3 bolts and 2 nuts. Let's get these bad boys out so we can get more close to the water pump. And don't forget to bag and tag everything you take out, because all these balls are different sizes. So I simply use the ball tray for this. And the final bolt comes out, and get ready for waterworks next. So this hose goes to the heater core inside to keep you nice and toasty in the winter time. Get that off. Gently pull on the water inlet assembly, because you don't want to bend or crack any of this stuff, and it will be a bad day. And this is one of the O-rings you need to replace. You can't reuse them. And this is where the thermostat lives. I need to replace this. And getting closer, this is the other O-ring you need to replace. You can't reuse them. Then I remove these 2 hoses to get more room to get to the water pump. And front of my engine is covered by all the gunk caked up over time. I think the main cause of it is the spilled oil hitting the drive belt and spraying it all over. And I grabbed my trusty degreaser can and went to town with some rags and clean it all up. And this is the reason you need to loosen these bolts that holds the water pump pulley, because now you have to jam something in between the nuts like a screwdriver and hold the water pump pulley from spinning. And pray to God, when you slip and hit your hand on the engine, it won't take all the skin off your arm. So it's held by 4 bolts, the pulley comes out, and you're one step closer to getting the water pump out. And grab a 14mm socket to take out the drive belt tensioner pulley. Bear in mind this has reverse threads, comes loose clockwise. Next, the idler pulley has normal threads, which is counterclockwise. As you can see here, I have more cleaning to do. It's filthy down there. Finally, we are onto the water pump. It held by 16 freaking bolts. Is that enough bolts, Toyota? Okay, let's grab a wrench and keep loosening the bolts all the way around. And bear in mind this has different lengths and different sizes of bolts. And don't forget to hit the cameraman out of the way. And this next step is really important to keep your bolts in order. Simply grab your brand new water pump and keep it near you while you're taking off the bolts, and put every bolt in corresponding bolt holes so you don't have to play the guessing game when you're putting everything back together. And get ready for waterworks for the second time. Final bolt comes out along with the water pump itself. There you go. And this is where that grounding sound comes out. Take the oil gasket out. This is the high quality metal gasket. And this next step is also really important, which is prepping the surfaces for the new water pump and the gasket. You had to take all the old gasket material out of the surface, so for this I used red Scotch-Brite and a razor blade. You don't want to use anything that can scar the surface or make it uneven, because otherwise you're gonna have coolant leaks. No, I'm not spraying WD-40 all over the place, it's just compressed air from WD-40 to blow off any residue from the cleaning process. And now I'm using rubbing alcohol to clean the surface. This is an overkill, you don't have to do that. I thought if there's any oil or something, it might not seal. So I give it a good wipe and you can see it's nice and shiny. So grab your brand new gasket, make sure not to bend or kink this, otherwise you're gonna have coolant leaks. Then transfer all your bolts from your new water pump to your old water pump. Then I'm cleaning all the bolts with degreaser to make them nice and shiny. And just because I have a little bit OCD, I checked every bolt hole with my endoscope to make sure there's nothing inside the bolt holes that gonna stop bolts from fully seating. And make yourself a water pump sandwich, and its next step is really important. In the workshop manual it says be sure to replace the bolt indicated by A with new ones or use adhesive 1344. The only equivalent I found from thread locker is medium strength 24210. Line up your water pump and the gasket with the bolt and gently thread them in, and be very careful not to cross thread these. Any resistance at all, back up and recheck your bolts. And gently tighten them up, finger tight. So after that you can go from a wrench and tighten them again before we torque them down. So these water pumps are held by two different sizes of bolts and they have different torque specs. The smaller bolts are 9.1 Newton meters and the bigger ones are 21 Newton meters. This is because the bigger bolts goes through the timing cover and hold that down too. Let's get the torque wrench set to 9.1 Newton meters and lock it up. Start torquing down the bolts from the middle of the water pump to outwards so it can seat properly and evenly. Next we have to put the dry belt tensioner pulley on, and this bolt has reverse thread. The torque specs for this is 43 Newton meters. Yeah, you guessed it right, people. I snapped my dry belt tensioner. I put an order for a brand new one, and while it's on the way, I'm gonna go ahead and cry myself to sleep now. I successfully completed the water pump job. Only thing I have to do is now to button everything up and fill the engine with coolant and run it to temperature and see how it goes. In the next episode, you're gonna see how I'm gonna replace it. Plus, in order to replace it, I need to get the alternator out and the AC pump out. And that's gonna be a fun little project too. If you like these kind of videos, don't forget to hit that like button. And if you want to see more of my screw ups, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. And until next time, keep wrenching.
Siya dumali?